It's strange how just a single sentence can replay in your mind for days, even weeks. That night after the family dinner, when the laughter faded and the house grew quiet, Daniel looked at me with eyes that didn't quite belong to the boy I'd once known. There was something in them, nothing inappropriate, but searching deep, as if he was seeing me for the very first time. And then he said just a few words. Words that have echoed in my head ever since. But before I tell you what happened, I'd love to know, where are you watching this story from tonight? Go ahead, write your city in the comments. I truly enjoy seeing where everyone is tuning in from. It makes this space feel like one big family table. Now let me take you back to that evening. It was one of those rare family dinners where everyone actually showed up. My sister brought her famous casserole. My brother, as always, told the same jokes he's been recycling for 20 years. The dining room glowed with the soft flicker of candles, their flames dancing along the table. Glasses caught the light plates clinked, and the warm hum of voices overlapped in a way that made the whole house feel alive. Daniel, though, had been quieter than usual. He's never been the type to compete with the noise of a crowded room, but that night, I noticed him glancing at me more than once. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he just needed more potatoes passed down. Or maybe he was lost in his thoughts. But it wasn't just glances. There was a softness in his expression, a stillness like he was watching, listening, holding on to something. Only he understood. When the last plates were scraped clean and the chairs began to shuffle, back people started to drift out. Coats were pulled on goodbyes, called out, and one by one, the door shut behind each pair of footsteps. I stayed in the kitchen, stacking dishes, rinsing glasses, letting the warmth of the evening settle over me. That's when I realized we were alone. The house, once so full of laughter, had grown so quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock above the stove. Daniel was leaning against the doorway, his hands in his pockets, watching me with that same unreadable gaze. "You don't have to help," I told him with a small smile, wiping down the table. "Go relax. It's been a long day." "I don't mind," he said, stepping closer. His voice was calm, measured. "It's nice just being here." Something in the way he said it made me pause. I kept my eyes on the rag in my hand, tracing circles on the wood, but I could feel his presence behind me, steady and quiet. We talked about little things at first, the roast, the oddly warm autumn weather, my sister's habit of bringing far too much food. But beneath the words, there was a stillness, an unspoken weight that seemed to hang between us. When I finally turned to face him, he was close enough that I could see the faint crease near his left eyebrow, the one that always appeared when he was thinking too hard. "You look different tonight," he said suddenly. The comment caught me off guard. "Different," I repeated, trying to keep my tone light. "Not in a bad way," he explained. "Just, I don't know, happier. Like you were glowing." I laughed softly, more to fill the silence than because I believed it. Must have been the wine. Maybe he said, though. His eyes told me he didn't believe it. I poured the last of the wine into 2 glasses, sliding one across the table to him. We sat again at the same table that only an hour before had been crowded with family. Now it felt enormous, the empty space around us, amplifying every small sound, every shift in breath. The candle between us had nearly burned down, wax pooling at the base. Shadows flickered across his face, catching in his eyes, making them seem warmer, more open. We talked more then, not about dinner or weather, but about his work, his regrets, the things he wished he had more time for. And as I listened, I found myself speaking too, not just about daily chores or family routines, but about life, about what really mattered. Somewhere in that exchange, I felt walls inside me begin to shift. He listened, really listened in a way that made me feel seen. Not as a hostess, not as a mother, but as a woman with her own dreams, her own fears. When the clock chimed softly from the living room, I glanced at it, surprised at how late it had gotten. "You should probably get going," I said, though. A part of me wished the night would never end. But instead of standing, Daniel leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, his voice low, steady. "That's the thing," he said quietly. "I'm not ready to leave yet." It was such a simple sentence, but it landed inside me like a stone dropped into still water, rippling out in ways I didn't expect. There was no urgency in his tone, no demand, just honesty. And it struck me how rare honesty like that had become in my life. I looked at him for a long moment, searching for the right response. But before I could speak, he added something else, the words that would replay in my mind for nights afterward. The words that would make me see him in a completely new light. "I'm not ready to leave yet," Daniel repeated, and the quiet of the kitchen seemed to lean in with me waiting. The candle between us had dwindled into a small crater of wax, the little flame tilting left, then right, as though it was listening too. I folded the dish towel and set it on the chair beside me, because my hands had started to tremble in that way they do when a feeling arrives, before the words to explain it. "Okay," I whispered. "Then stay." He nodded, but he didn't move. His eyes stayed steady and gentle, carrying something I couldn't quite name. For a brief moment, I wondered if he needed money or if something had gone wrong at work. But that wasn't it. What I saw wasn't trouble, it was tenderness. The kind of tenderness that grows heavier the longer it goes unspoken. Mom, Daniel began, and the word landed in the room, soft as a hand on my shoulder. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago." The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. And in my mind, the years between us lined up like photographs tucked in an old shoebox school plays, and missing teeth, scraped knees, broken bikes, and the winter he caught the flu. And I kept soup simmering while he dozed on the couch. In all those memories, I saw myself moving quickly, fixing, smoothing, holding everything together. For just a moment, I wished I had moved slower. I wished I had learned how to sit with a feeling the way you sit with a sunset, not trying to change it, just witnessing its colors. "I've been carrying this since Dad died," Daniel said softly. "Since the house got too quiet and you started doing everything on your own." I told myself being strong meant keeping silent, not adding to your load. But now I think my silence only made the weight heavier. He looked down at his hands, large, capable hands. His father's hands. I swallowed hard, trying not to let my eyes betray me. Carrying what I asked. That I should have been more present, he admitted. That I should have checked on you more, called more, stopped by for no reason. The way I used to wander into the kitchen for a slice of apple while you were baking. I didn't know how to be there for you unless you asked. And you never asked. Something deep inside me ached than an old ache that had lived beneath the errands of the day and the dishes of the night. I didn't know how I confessed quietly. Asking felt like admitting I couldn't hold it all together. I've always been the "I've got it" person, even when I didn't. He gave me a small smile, sad, affectionate. Yeah, he said softly. You are that person. I think I inherited that part. The candle flickered so low that a ribbon of smoke rose and curled into the air. I reached for the glass of water beside me to snuff it out, then paused. Let it burn out on its own, I said. It feels right. We sat there in the gentle ticking of the clock and the faint glow of the flame. Outside, the windows had gone dark, turning into mirrors that reflected our little kitchen back at us. Daniel shifted in his chair, leaning forward, his elbows resting on the table. The very posture I used to scold him for as a boy. I said nothing now. Let the elbows stay. Let the rules rest. Here's the other part. He continued quietly. I'm scared sometimes. I've always been the one to solve the problem instead of naming it. But I was scared I'd lose you to the busyness you wear like armor. Scared that one day I'd come over and you'd be a stranger to me, the way grief can make strangers out of the people you love. He hesitated, his voice catching just slightly. I was scared that if I said it out loud, it might make it real. I felt my breath deepen, steadying itself against the weight of his words. The word leaving spread through the room and settled into the corners. I felt the shape of it in my chest. For a long moment, I didn't answer, not because I was hurt, not because I was angry, but because I wanted to be careful with my heart. I looked at him, his careful posture, his open face, the way he was offering the news. Like a delicate plate, he was afraid to drop. Thank you for telling me here, I said softly. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. I want you to build a life that truly fits you. I want you to find the quiet you didn't have when you were 10 years old and the house was full of cousins and chaos. I want your mornings to feel like beginnings, not obligations. His shoulders eased just slightly. I was scared you'd hear moving and think abandoning. I admitted honestly. For a second I did, but then I remembered what you said earlier about presence. Moving doesn't erase that. It just means we have to be deliberate. Deliberate, Daniel repeated. That's a good word. We can make Sundays ours, I told him. Every week, without fail. We'll cook something simple, sit without phones, and maybe pull one letter out of the box. Then we tell a story about the week, not about duties, not about checklists, but about what we noticed. That's how presence grows on purpose. His eyes caught the lamplight and softened. I'd like that a lot. Good, I said, feeling steadiness bloom in me. And when moving day comes, I'll be there with tape and labels. I'll insist on labeling one box kitchen happiness, and you'll roll your eyes. but I'll do it anyway. He laughed, then the sound easy and true. Deal. But only if you label another one Sunday Letters. Done, I said, smiling. We talked for a while longer, the way people talk at the end of a long journey. They didn't know they were unquietly grateful to have arrived somewhere safe. He told me about the little apartment he had toured, how the afternoon light spilled across the floorboards and the small nook by the window where he could read. I told him about a volunteer program at the library I'd been considering, the one where retirees read with children after school. We traded plans like recipes, passing them back and forth until they began to taste like home. At some point, he reached for the throw blanket and tucked it over my knees, the very same way I used to do for him when cartoons ran too long and his toes grew cold. The symmetry of it pressed against my throat. I swallowed and let it be what it was. Care, moving both ways, Mom Daniel said, after a long silence, his voice low, steady. Those words I said at the table earlier, I'm not ready to leave yet. I think I meant more than just tonight. I meant I'm not ready to leave this way of being with you. Honest. Without all the busy armor. I don't want us to slip back into the version where we only exchange updates. I want us to keep this. I turned and met his gaze, and for the first time in longer than I could measure, I felt the clear old line between us, mother and son. Not as two roles doing tasks, but as two people willing to sit with the truth and let it be simple. Me too, I whispered. Let's keep it. We sat like that until the lamplight thinned and the hour grew late enough that even our silence felt like sleep beginning to gather. When he finally stood, it wasn't the half-rise of someone making a quick exit. He stood with the calmness of a man who knew he could come back tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. At the door, he paused, looking around the room, the way people do when they're taking a mental photograph. I saw him notice the little things, the shoes by the mat, the umbrella in the corner, the ribbon still tied around the letters on the coffee table. He reached for the knob, then turned back to me. One more thing, he said. I love you. Not the rushed, I love you we say on the phone in passing, but the kind where every word is grounded, steady, true. I love you too, I answered. The kind you mean. He nodded once, then stepped into the hallway. The cooler air folded into the warmth behind him. I stood there, watching him go down the stairs, steady and hurried, knowing something between us had shifted, not away, but closer. I closed the door gently and leaned my forehead against it for a breath. The house was quiet again, but this quiet wasn't empty. It had a new shape, like a room rearranged to let in more light. I walked back into the living room, lifted the wooden box, and chose a letter at random. I didn't open it. I just held it in both hands, the way you hold a promise that has finally been spoken out loud. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the faint blur of the ceiling and listened to the small sounds a house makes as it settles into midnight. I thought about how love changes its face over the years. Once it was a hand steadying the back of a bicycle. Later it was a casserole left quietly on a doorstep. And tonight, it was a sentence spoken in a kitchen while a candle burned low. I'm not ready to leave yet. I understood then that the most surprising part of the evening wasn't some hidden secret waiting to explode. It was something gentler, but braver, the willingness to say the quietly difficult things while there's still time to do something with them. I rolled to my side and watched the thin strip of streetlight flicker along the curtain. Tomorrow I would text Daniel a picture of the pantry hinge that squeaked and ask if he wanted to fix it on Sunday. He'd come over with a can of oil and we'd bicker cheerfully about the label maker, then sit down to eat something sweet and pull out a letter to read aloud. We would practice presence the way you learn a new instrument, awkward at first, then unexpectedly beautiful in the small improvements only the two of you notice. And before sleep found me, I let myself return to the kitchen. In my mind, 2 glasses, the faint smoke of a candle that had done its job, and the simple image of a mother and her grown son staying a little longer than planned, discovering perhaps that sometimes the most powerful words are not the ones that break a life open, but the ones that quietly stitch it back together. And now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment like this where a simple sentence from someone you love changed the way you saw them, or even the way you saw yourself? If you have, share it in the comments below. I'd love to read your stories. And if this video touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel together. We're building a space where love, honesty, and presence matter most.